Autumn of 1943, troops of the 4th Ukrainian Front, having defeated the Germans near Melitopol city, continued their offensive and reached the northern coast of the Sivash Sea and the Isthmus of Perikop. As a result of this operation, a significant group of German and Romanian troops were cut off in the Crimea. At the same time, following a skillful air-land operation across the Kerch Strait, troops of the Coastal Army took the bridgehead on the Kerch Peninsula in the area of Kerch City. The Crimea turned into a trap for fascist invaders, which our soldiers nicknamed the Fritz Trap. The Crimea, a jewel of our country, our favorite holiday area. The moment of liberating the Crimea was drawing near. The troops were joining together. The final preparations were made. The final hours before the fighting. The battle will commence shortly. This will be a battle to the death, to repay the enemy for seizing our native soil and causing our people's sufferings. Silence. Simple words. Soldiers' thoughts about their faraway homes, their loved ones. On the 8th of April, following the order of the Supreme Commander, troops of the 4th Ukrainian Front started storming the enemy's defenses at the Isthmus of Perikop and southern coast of the Sivash Sea. Turkish bulwark, Perikop, familiar great places. Supported by heavy artillery fire, our great infantry started to storm the enemy's defenses at the Isthmus of Perikop and pushed forward, forward in the face of death. Like their fathers and older brothers in 1920, when they fought for liberty and the Soviet rule. The rumble of the fighting at Perikop merged with the roaring of the battle for the Sivash. The artillery helped to cover the offensive of the Sivash at night. Aircraft covered the crossings over the Sivash. Tough fights broke out in the air. German planes burst into flames in the sky over the Crimea. Our pilots supported the ground forces, continuously striking at the enemy's troops and defenses. Having broken tough enemy defenses at the Isthmus of Perikop, the forces of the 4th Ukrainian Front took Armyansk and reached the Germans in the Ishun area. Here are the approaches to Armyansk. The Germans regarded the Crimea as an unassailable fortress. They used their experience of making fortified lines when they built the barrier around the Crimea. But thanks to the strength of Soviet artillery, aviation, tanks, and the offensive of our troops, the enemy's defenses were destroyed. Following the infantry units, which broke through strong enemy defenses on the shores of the southern coast of the Sivash, tanks started their mission on Crimean soil. Hitler's Crimean front has been broken. Having destroyed the enemy's defenses at the Isthmus of Perikop and along the shores of the southern coast of the Sivash, the troops of the 4th Ukrainian Front successfully continued their offensive and took the most important railway hub in the Crimea, Zhankoy. German trains. The steaming train is an illustrative example of the speed and skill of our assault. It also shows how shocked and panic-stricken the enemy was. Abandoning their trains with weapons and military equipment, German and Romanian troops fled to the Black Sea ports in the hope of escape, but the Red Army was at their heels. Here in Zhankoy, numerous enemy soldiers and officers were taken prisoner. At the same time as the 4th Ukrainian Front Army was carrying out a successful offensive operation, the Maritime Army launched an offensive in Kerch. the enemy fought hard to defend themselves at the approaches to the city. Step by step, meter by meter, the soldiers of the Maritime Army liberated the territory of Kerch. Long-suffering Kerch. It used to be a flourishing city. The Germans turned it into ruins. Having liberated Kerch, the troops of the Maritime Army were advancing fast. The number of prisoners grew. Defeated and demoralized by our attacks, the remaining soldiers of German and Romanian units surrendered with weapons and military equipment. This is one of the enemy's artillery units who laid down their arms and surrendered. Day and night, without any rest, our mobile mechanized army was moving along the Crimean roads, pursuing the enemy. On the 13th of April, continuing their successful offensive, troops of the 4th Ukrainian Front and the Maritime Army took three of Crimea's biggest cities, Simferopol, Yevpatoria, and Feodosia. Feodosia, a port and a health resort. When those brave soldiers had left the Crimea, they had promised to come back victorious, and they kept their word. The Germans and their Romanian lackeys were ordering people around here for a long time. They ravaged and destroyed the city, strangling the life out of it. The house and museum of the famous Russian painter Ayvazovsky. This is what the Germans and Romanians did. We know this pattern of robbers and vandals. A German cemetery. Crimean soil gave them nothing but crosses. Feodosia's gardens are in bloom. Spring has come to the Crimea, the spring of liberation. Simferopol. A happy day. Soviet tanks are in the streets of the Crimean capital. They are moving fast along the roads, taking them to the sea, to Sebastopol, to the total liberation of the Crimea. That day, the troops of the 4th Ukrainian Front also liberated Yevpatoria, a port on the Black Sea. The terrible days of fascist slavery are over. Long live the brave liberators of the Crimea. Yevpatoria used to be a first-class resort. Hundreds of thousands of our workers had treatment and came on holiday here. This was an example of a children's health resort. The Germans serviced their vehicles here. They turned a wonderful children's sanatorium into a garage. Yevpatoria's beach. It used to be the best in our country. But what is great for a Russian is death for a German. The partisans come down from the hills. People's avengers, Soviet people who wouldn't bow to the invaders. During the long months of occupation, they fought hard with the enemy, waylaying the Germans at every step. In mountains, forests, ravines, Crimea's towns and villages, they brought revenge and death to the enemy. Bakhchisarai, heroic partisans are coming back home. The troops of the 4th Ukrainian Front and the Maritime Army were advancing fast. Our mobile, mechanized army was bringing death to the enemy as it pushed to the sea and mountains. Our troops moved forward rapidly and cut the enemy's possible retreat towards Sebastopol. The enemy tried to set back our army in Alushta. This attempt was costly for them. Yalta. The beautiful Yalta has been liberated. The swiftness and assertiveness of our divisions and partisan units saved this wonderful resort. The Germans didn't have time to ruin it. Massandra, a famous wine region. The Germans wanted to take the vintage wines, but didn't have time. Attacked by our aircraft, they will have to drink the salty water of the Black Sea, and we'll have the wine ourselves. Livadia. Livadia Palace. There was a sanatorium for collective farmers here. When the war is over, they will come here again and spend summer nights remembering those heroic days of liberating the Crimea. Alupka is liberated. It's a great resort on the Black Sea. Vorontsov's palace and museum was also saved by the fast advances of our troops. Thousands of prisoners are plodding along the southern Crimean coast. The Crimean soil is being cleansed. The agonized enemy is clinging on to the last boundary of Crimean soil, Sebastopol. It's our Sebastopol, the city of our glory. For Sebastopol, for the Crimea, for the total liberation of our soil. Fire!